He was like, basically, he just finished wrestling on the floor at the Angel of the Bridge at Henley, like a Sunday of Henley, and he'd gone outside for some air. And he was talking to the bouncer, and the bouncer was like, I've never seen people act like this, except when they're on drugs. He was like, I'm pretty sure none of you guys are on drugs. And Ben was like, yeah, like, that's the drugs, like right there, like Henley. I think probably a lot of us are just people that found a different kind of drug, like the adrenaline and endorphins and stuff of racing. Like, that's what draws people back in. That's why you never get away.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. It's Henley week and everyone's super busy. So we thought after doing 15 episodes so far to date, we're going to, in true rowers fashion, do a little bit of an evaluation. So let's get going.
Yeah, obviously we knew it'd be a mad week, and we've been really busy with bookings recently, which has been really good. It's going really well. We've got some good stuff lined up for the summer. But this kind of still filling a little gap. So thought it would just be really interesting to go over like what we've done, changes we've made, and what we want to do maybe in the future a little bit, and kind of respond to like a lot of you guys who've approached us when we've been down at regattas and down at qualifiers yesterday. And yeah, it's been really good. So like, just like you said, opportunity to talk about that stuff. And yeah, like you said, we talk about bringing the skills of rowing into business. So if we can apply that for this and look at taking some of those things, like, yeah, making sure we're evaluating ourselves and listening to feedback and things like that. So yeah, hopefully there'll be some interesting stuff to talk about.
Feedback's good, and it's definitely much appreciated, because obviously we want to improve, and there are certain things that we're happy with or happier with than others. So we just want to make sure that we're also working on bringing the highest quality of the show possible. So what's on the agenda for today?
I guess, yeah, so just start by talking about how we feel it's been. I think we both agreed that it's taken off in a way we probably didn't think it would to start with. And it's been really cool. Like I said previously, we've been back on the circuit. We did Wallingford, Nat Schools, Met and Marlow regattas. So in total, it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. 8 days of events. And we're both down at qualifiers yesterday, and we bumped into a load of people there who was really positive about it. I think that's probably one thing we've been surprised at, the speed at which people are sort of noticing and coming up and saying that they love it and like they love the content and stuff.
Yeah, really enjoyed being down at the circuit, and obviously like promoting the podcast and getting the word out. Obviously, we've been trying to also raise some money for Jim and Ian for the Atlantic Pursuit, which was really good. And yeah, on the days that we have done events, like we could definitely see the increase in like views and follows and other things. So it's definitely good that people are happy and catching on. So let's maybe talk about some of the things that we're going to change in the future, or some of the things that we're going to stick with.
Yeah, it's like when we first started out, we talked about this for a long time, and you hope that what you would produce people would like, but it's obviously you're never sure. We could sort of realize that you can study every top podcast and how content is put out there, and you see a lot of people doing sort of clickbaity taglines or like thumbnails and stuff, and we kind of came to the conclusion that we'll just try and produce the content that we would be interested in, and hopefully, like, as geeks of rowers, like if we like it, then hopefully other people will as well. And that's been really good. Yeah, we're like 3 months in now, and it's really good to be getting the feedback and messaging, being able to help people. It was a pretty cool day at Marlow when one of the American kids came in and wanted a little bit of help with their race plan. We got to just sit down in the tent and give him some little pointers, or maybe some little things that he hadn't thought of. And I think they had a pretty good race, didn't they, in their final? So that was pretty cool.
One thing that's also been really good is the opportunity to obviously catch up with people that I haven't seen for maybe like 5, 6, 7 years, especially on the circuit, or people that we actually can reconcile with now, and obviously talk some more crap about rowing in the meantime.
Yeah, it's been really good. It's definitely it's helped us get out there. It's like obviously one of the point was to try and get ourselves and our name out there a little bit, but we discussed as well like making sure that the content is like useful for other people, and we talked about it with Ben, getting to that point that if the hard learned lessons can be given out to people at the start of the career rather than having to spend their entire career like working out how to do it like we had to, then hopefully that can kind of push the sport on. So it's not, I think we're not going to be disingenuous and say obviously we're doing this in a certain point to try and help what we're doing, but also like really enjoy seeing it help other people and like getting comments and people saying that they like it, or had a comment from a friend of mine who said he listened to the podcast sort of about mindset and doing it for your mates, and he had a 2K and pulled a 2K PB, and he's my age, he's like 34, so he's a club rower, but any 2K PB at 34 is hard fought. He's been in full-time-ish training for years, so like hearing things like that, as Andy Crawshaw, shout out if you're listening, things like that are just awesome to see, like really nice to be able to help. We've said it's like in coaching, that was one of the nicest things about coaching, is be able to give one person that little tidbit. And again, we said with this, like if we can reach a bigger audience, and it sort of looks like we are already, and it's growing really well.
One of our friends who's not involved with rowing, and she's never rowed, never seen it in person, she calls herself the podcast manager. She says that watching our race day episode really helped her with her university stress of just doing her final year assignments, which is pretty interesting in terms of applicable knowledge and transferable knowledge from seemingly unrelated disciplines. But hopefully more comments like this, and obviously really enjoyed it, even now that the qualifiers yesterday, just being stopped by some people and saying that that the episodes are really, really fun to listen to. So we're going to talk about what more fun we've got planned in store for the upcoming weeks and the summer.
Yeah, it's kind of get into like some of the things, I guess, from the first episode. Even when we first had equipment, we were really like fanning about and didn't know what we wanted to do. We did a test episode at Leander, and that went awful.
Yeah, like, can you imagine? I tried to like recover the audio from this, and it would be basically a few days worth of work. Like mics weren't working, switching off. We went from having like trying to sort of like do like a wireless setup to switching down to do like a wired episode. I wasn't even in that test episode to start with.
Yeah, you
tried to miss to produce.
Yeah, you were too busy. Like that's the other thing, like just getting used to being on camera, getting used to all the different things you have to do, trying to follow a conversation and still make some notes and think about a point, but not want to interrupt someone. And even like some of the first testers we did here, we didn't have lights. It was like super dark. You could barely see. Like it took us like quite a lot before we even got to the first episode. Obviously like a lot of planning, a lot of theorizing, but like even just like getting the equipment right, working out how to do those things, like you can see why a lot of people are like, oh, that's a great idea. Like we've been talking about doing something like that. But like actually when you get down to it, like we really had to kind of push on through and just be like, right, no, we are going to do this.
Yeah, so that's the aspect of obviously like recording, just trying to make sure that like you're actually able to like capture like reasonable quality audio and video, and then also then think about what you're going to say, how that comes across, and then obviously like the biggest thing is like being on camera. To start with, it was just a lot of like arming and ahhing and thinking like, oh, should I say it like this, or maybe I should talk about something different. I don't like the way I said this, but actually just the best thing that I found is just to be like a bit more like genuine, authentic, and just take down like a little pause and obviously talk about what I think I would also like find interesting and Tom as well to listen to. So obviously then that's recording, but after this you gotta like piece it all together, piece all the cameras, piece all the mics together, edit the show, make sure like you keep the quality to be reasonably high, and then obviously like everyone knows that the YouTube, Spotify, they compress the quality. So like, how do you battle this? And then like, obviously you need to still then promote it, get the word out. It's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of enjoyable work. And specifically hearing the comments about how much people have been enjoying listening to the episodes, like it just makes all the hard effort and all the sleepless nights worth it. And there's been quite a few in that time.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to put yourself out there. I'm like, we've talked about, I'm as guilty as anyone else for sort of feeling like an imposter, like whatever, the things I talk about, people are going to be like, that's wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So you got that sort of nagging voice, just like in the same, like when you're in the boat, it's that little nagging voice, like, oh, you don't really know what you're talking about and stuff. So yeah, to have the feedback is actually makes like a huge difference. So I really appreciate when people come and talk to us, and it's it's still kind of like, like pinch kind of moment, like, oh, someone's kind of like stopped you and recognized you and said like, you're doing a great job. So that's really cool. But even through those first episodes, like you said, like working out how to be on camera, how to discuss, there's a lot of people that they're not negative, but I think it's helpful, like have people come and give us like little like tips, maybe like what they might like to see and stuff, which is nice.
What do we always say, that like if you can't take critique, you're never going to make it far in sport? And we've also had a few guests say that on the show as well.
Yeah, I had a nice South African guy who was speaking to me in the bar at Leander at qualifiers, and he was like, "Oh, like if I could give you an advice, I'd just say that like there's quite a few names that get put out there, and just like single names, and we can't really follow." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. I also kind of hear it as we speak it, and like sometimes you don't want to interrupt the flow of your guest if they're in like a good conversation, but then other times you're like." Like not to pick on him, but Ben, it was like, oh yeah. So I was talking to Steve, and I'm like, you need to see Steve Williams. You need to see Olympic gold medalist Steve Williams. Like you don't need to just say Steve. It's difficult because obviously you're speaking to some rowers, but obviously not everyone knows like the language of rowing and things like talking about UT2 or whatever, and then afterwards thinking, God, I didn't even explain that. There's a lot of people that aren't going to understand that. Or the ladies' plate. That was the funny one.
Yeah, she was the cox of the ladies' plate.
Yeah, talking about when I was racing the ladies' plate, and it's you have to explain that. Oh, that's actually a men's event. I don't know why it's called the ladies' plate. I'm sure someone does know why.
I mean, to be honest, like some of the stuff that gets talked about, or some of the names that get thrown around, if our listeners feel bad because sometimes they don't know the names, guys, I'm just sat here at a table. I also don't know half of these names, but I'm just in it for the ride.
Yeah, it's like that balance, like trying to go into stuff. I mean, that's the whole thing about the way we do it, just trying to keep it real open. We don't have much direction, and we had someone came up and said,
oh yeah, at Marla Regatta, they said, oh, I think it's really good, the episodes, but the questions look way too rehearsed.
Yeah, like they're not. Like I literally will have like 4 bullet points on the notepad, and they're not rehearsed. But again, like in some ways, I guess that's kind of a compliment that maybe we're asking the right questions, or at least kind of like asking the questions that the audience wants to see. Like I quite like it in podcasts that I've followed. Generally, some of them when the host asks the guest the question that was in your head, it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to hear. So you want to try and take it from that perspective. And it's probably good how like you and I kind of have like different viewpoints on some stuff. So we'll ask kind of different questions. I think that works quite well.
I mean, I'm definitely guilty of probably not chiming in more, or like sometimes when I do like want to say something, I just sort of like hold back and let the conversation like flow, and I don't always want to like interject, because like one thing about me is I could talk about 15 different topics in the space of 10 seconds. So also like I just want to make sure the podcast kind of like stays on track, and when I do add something is like genuinely interesting to the conversation too, because I understand like very, very often I will sit at a table with people who have got way more experience and way more rowing knowledge and skills and expertise to discuss than me. So it's also like a really good learning exercise, just being able to like sit across from so many people, ask them the questions, and them giving you like a really good answer for it too.
Absolutely. Like I'm genuinely learning a lot more from everyone I speak to. And it's quite funny. We filmed Ben Lewis and Rory Cruikshank sort of back to back. And like literally some of the stuff I've learned from Ben the day before, we're talking about with Rory the next day. So like from episode to episode, and like that's one thing, if we want to improve, we sort of really want to take on, I don't even want to, like it's an amazing opportunity to be able to like listen to all this information in front of you. And like we've said before, like I know Ben and we're coached, and like if I met him down on the bank, we'd have a good old chat, but I wouldn't get to be like, oh, so tell me all about like, when you went and did this SAS thing, like when you're on camera and you're telling it for other people, you get a chance to like really explore those subjects a little bit more. Yeah.
I definitely liked when we had the episode with John Collins, and he just went through the entire story of the Rio Olympics, the build up, and then how that compared to Tokyo. Those are like always been the questions that I wanted to ask an Olympic athlete, and sort of like find out what it was going through their head, what it was like at the start line of the Olympics. I'm sure I even like mentioned it in the episode too. That I wanted to like sort of like find out what it's like, etc. So just also like sometimes you might know a person and then you hear their story and you're like, wow, I'm really blown away by this. And that was absolutely the case with John as well.
John was an easier one because he really wanted to tell his story. So he was, every time we sort of veered off, I wouldn't have had to be like, okay, so let's go back to here. John would kind of put, okay, so where were we? And like he really like had an idea, so that was actually like a bit easier. Like we said, we both almost just sat back and let him rip with that, which is really good. There's others where we try and keep on track a bit more. I mean, we talked about with the Dave Bow one. I got a little bit excited and like just kind of like lost my notes a little bit and just spent. I like it's quite good that you can get to the point where you almost forget the camera's there, and I was just having a conversation with Dave and just remembering the good old days, like that kind of thing. And I sort of afterwards thinking, like, oh yeah, maybe we probably like spoke a little bit too much about the Thames Cup. And even you said like, there's probably only one episode where I haven't mentioned the Thames Cup.
Yeah, I think there's only one out of the 15 that we've done so far.
Not this one now because it's come up.
Yeah, no. Well, one thing that Cara said on the episode that we did with her about yoga for rowing was that it doesn't feel like an interview. It feels more of like a chat that you'd have with your mates down at the pub. And that is exactly the kind of vibe that we're going for, because there's no point like putting our guests on the spot or just, asking the super difficult or like questions. I think there's so much more to just be learned from like actually speaking to the person and not the image of the person that they would inevitably try to project as if they were being interviewed.
Yeah, definitely. Like just like loosest plan as ever. And, I had dinner with the People's Champ last night and, he was kind of saying he was speaking with a few people and they're saying they really liked. He said, you can kind of see that you've got a few notes on your little notepad, but like other than that, it's just kind of like generally steering the conversation. But, ultimately, like just allowing the person to talk about what they want to talk about as well, like not trying to like force them into a box. Or I don't like interviews when they're short as well, because it's like, right, we're going to talk about why I've got you on here in the first place, like what you've achieved, what you're doing right now, like what's the plans for the future. Cool, see you later. And then that doesn't really give you enough time to like expand in any area. And I think we've like got better chats with certain people by allowing them to just kind of jump into like where they wanted to talk about.
I would say everyone's got like their own area of expertise, and sometimes you just feel when like the topics are sort of like coming up and when there's an opportunity to like explore a thought. So for example, we did an episode, like one of the first ones we did with Morgan, and I mean, I looked at the recording time and it was like an hour and a half, but there was still so many questions that I wanted to ask. And maybe that's like a little downside on my part, that I don't have notes prepared. So sometimes there's questions I want to ask, but I forget to. But no, sometimes, there's just more that if we've got the person in the room and then there's an opportunity to speak to them, I definitely really want to take advantage of that and just like ask the questions that I also want to know the answer to. So hopefully, like you said, maybe there's someone listening and they think, oh yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to ask. So that's
hopefully. And then, or you can always like drop, like I said, drop us a message or whatever. There's something you wanted to ask. Like most of the people we've got on, like if there was like a burning question that you're like, damn, I wish I asked him that thing or her, be like, yeah, just let us know and I'll drop them a message. Like we can do that. That's pretty good.
I always ask, like at the end of the episode, I try to just send us a message in the comments or in Instagram DMs, etc. And we have been getting like quite a few more of these, so really appreciate it. It has been quite a busy couple of weeks, so we're gonna get back to every single message that we've got soon.
Eventually, yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other funny thing is when you start speaking to someone and they talk about what you're doing and stuff, yeah, so this is going really well and the rest of it, and then like the podcast hasn't come up and then you'll say like, we're also doing this podcast, and they'll be like, yeah, I watch all of it. It's just like, oh, you could have said like,
yeah, it's mind-blowing. Like I'm not actually expecting like people to have like seen it or heard about it this quickly. I guess what we're doing on TikTok and sort of like Instagram really does help with that.
Yeah, and then last night, I was talking to a guy last night, and I kind of like went into something that we've spoken about previously on the podcast, and he was just kind of like, yeah, like what you said when you were talking to Ben. And I was like, what? This is weird now. Like I've only got so many good lines. We're going to use them all up on the podcast.
I think if the lines expire after episode 15, then we probably shouldn't have started this in the first place. So I think there's a few more that we've got in the arsenal that we can that we can keep coming.
Yeah, like getting used to booking guests as well. Like trying to find time in the diary and like business has been going well. So for us, like trying to make that's always quite fun, and like there's always quite a lot of back and forth and getting hold of people. And I think I think I would have thought that it would be harder to get people, but like again, the response has been really good, and everyone we spoke to has been really keen. Obviously, some of them are busier than others, but yeah, kind of booking people in. Like not everyone has time. I mean, for now, we've like been really strict about doing it live in person. We spoke to some other people who was like, oh, I could zoom in, and I just don't think that's the same. You're never going to get the same kind of conversation.
I definitely want to keep the quality of the show high, and obviously you can have like a different chat if you sat across from a person. You can see the way they breathe, the way they think, the way they like want to talk about something. It's also like easier to judge when someone still has like a thought they want to explore. So we're like not going to like sort of interject or like talk over each other over Zoom.
It's quite fun having like the before and afters, like obviously the stuff that's not on camera. Like we kind of realize it, in some ways when you have a guest on, it can seem a little bit strange to kind of like they like knock at the door and then we'll like hopefully sort of within 15-20 minutes like be rolling the camera. But then we sort of realized if we sit down and don't roll the camera, like the stories just start coming out anyway. So like there's one thing we realized, like without being rude, like let's get started quickly, because like automatically like as soon as you get there, like the stories start coming out.
Yeah, you don't want to have to like retell them and sort of like say a second version of the same story, because like it always hits better the first time. One of the funny things that, just speaking about booking guests, I definitely find it hilarious that some people think they're like don't have anything interesting to talk about. Like just honestly, just start talking about your experiences. I think so many times we can like just get caught up in this sort of limbo mode where we think, oh, because we're so focused on the future, you never actually get a chance to like look back on like what you've done and like sort of like reflect on certain like experiences that you've had or some of the achievements. So you might not think, well, what have I actually done? Because like compared to my idols, like it's not as much as I would have potentially liked to see. So sometimes we also like have to convince people that they do indeed have like interesting things to talk about. So
I can already see that that's actually with bookings, like it's no longer like, oh, will you do our new podcast? It's not like we're trying to like get them on. It's like we're trying to convince them that they're good enough to come on. Like so many people have just been like, oh, I don't know what I would say. I don't know, like you've got an Olympic silver medal. Like what the hell are you talking about? Like of course people want to hear what you've got to say. And I can see like that's going to be like kind of the hardest bit maybe of getting people on. It's like convince them that they definitely have knowledge that it's going to be really useful.
And also, like, if you're just worried about like how you're gonna come across on camera, and maybe you should just look at like some of the first episodes that we've done, because honestly, you sort of like get used to it, but also like it's so completely different if you're just trying to like have a conversation and forget that the cameras are rolling. So the conversation can kind of go a bit easier. And yeah, just don't stress. It's not live. And
I think the other thing as well is like we're not, like we said, like I'm not trying to be gimmicky with this. We're not trying to be clickbait or have, you know, I hate when I like see a title on YouTube and it says one thing and then like you're watching like 15 minutes of this video and it's got nothing to do with it. I don't want to go down that route, and it's not about like trying to grow exponentially or do it for any other reason. Like it is about the knowledge. So also like it's in the same sense, like it's not just about hitting the big names. Like obviously we want to get some big names. We want to talk to people with Olympic medals, like, and that's happening. But also like it's about sharing knowledge. So like, you know, maybe the people that haven't quite got as far or struggled or had setbacks, like there's also so much to learn from them. And then also like coaches and physios, you know, the potentially got a physio coming on. We had Cara come on and talk about yoga. Like it's all about knowledge, and it's like, it's about, you know, like you said, like the expertise and the knowledge you have, not just like how big a star you are.
Exactly, because sometimes the level of achievements that you might have is not directly correlated to sort of the nuances that you can bring to the conversation. And because everyone's just kind of like walking a different walk of life or a life path, they've had different experiences, they've spoken to certain people, they might have learned this thing from that person, but they had to realize what someone else was like taught by their coach. So I think it's interesting to also like see the personal development. And exactly, there's so many people that have substance and real passion and knowledge that they can ooze about rowing, but potentially they haven't gone to the Olympics or they haven't got a world championship medal, but that doesn't mean like what they have to say isn't going to be like valuable or interesting.
Yeah, and then the other thing we're kind of getting into more is business. So it was really good having Rory on and talking about how he sort of, took his rowing into a business, and a really successful business. And we're having other companies now we're sort of talking with, and same like we were talking with Rory, like it's really nice to be collaborating, not necessarily like with a product or whatever, but like being able to like have a company on and talk about what they're doing, or promote that, have athletes promote themselves or their online coaching and things like that. And again, like that's for us is like a feel good factor of like, if we can help someone else promote themselves, like that's perfect. And like if this platform can do that, then yeah, like that's awesome, like awesome to see. Like I don't even mean it like, it doesn't come across, I don't mean it in an arrogant way. It's not like, oh, like our platform can like promote you. It's like, I'm like pumped, like this like random thing that me and you just sit in my living room and like chat shit about rowing is like getting people going, like it's helping them in their rowing or in their business or in their life. Like that's fucking awesome. Like I'm just happy about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's what I'm sure this is what a lot of enthusiasts about this sport would like to do. And I think it's pretty incredible that we've got the chance to sort of like use those connections that we have and also like just share so much knowledge and interesting chats. Sometimes like what we have to do is just kind of stop ourselves from going overboard with like the amount of times that we're recording. So we did an episode with Rory Kofus, and it was, I think, our longest episode to date, and it was an incredible chat. Like, absolutely loved it. And then we switched the cameras off, thinking that Rory's going to have to go soon. No, we just sat down and spoke for another 40 minutes when the cameras weren't on. But who's going to tune into like a 4-hour episode? Like, we have to also like be mindful of this whilst sort of like getting the points across like quickly. Because sometimes like, we'll finish a 2.5-hour episode and the guest has been like, oh, has it been an hour already? No, it's been like over 2 hours. So
yeah, time goes really fast for sure. Like when you're filming, yeah, with Rory, like it's funny. I think with quite a few guests, like we sort of forget now we're 15 episodes in, we've got a slightly bit more comfortableness with it. Whereas like when a new guest comes on, like maybe that first hour is kind of like just flies past. Like John Collins even said, like I met him yesterday. It was like, yeah, I really need to rewatch it because I basically forgot everything I said. Because it's just like quite a blur. And a lot of them finish and then think about a lot of other things that they wanted to say. Like Ben Lewis messaged me and was like, oh, I've thought about this thing. I wanted to tell this story. I'll tell it because I hope he doesn't mind. But yeah, he basically said, he was like, basically he just finished wrestling on the floor at the Angel of the Bridge at Henley, like a Sunday of Henley with Pat Lepage, and he'd gone outside for some air. I think he was like proper pissed. And they was talking to the bouncer, and the bouncer was like, I've never seen people act like this, except when they're on drugs. Like, not just booze, like drugs. And he was like, I'm pretty sure none of you guys are on drugs. And Ben was like, yeah, like, that's the drugs. Like, right there, like Henley. Like, I think probably a lot of rowers are just people that found a different kind of drug, like the adrenaline and endorphins and stuff of racing. Like, that's what draws people back in. That's why you never get away. So, yeah, we've definitely had guests where by the time they finish, they're like, oh, I really want to talk about stuff now. And I think we'll definitely have people back in and kind of specialize in them. Because like, for example, John Collins, again, that wasn't a short podcast. It was a good few hours and we talked through his whole career up to date. But there were like little pockets in there, like things that he's done that you could expand into and speak for 3. Like you could take like one thing, like the post-Olympic blues and just expand on that in terms of like business, success in general in any form, how you get like, how like achieving your goal then kind of leads to a bit of like, oh, what next? So like we're gonna for sure have people back on, and I think people are gonna, and I think that we can get more out of them as well in their next episode because they'll be a bit more happy on camera.
I think I definitely agree with Ben that like rowing is 100% a drug. It's a love-hate relationship that some people might have with it, and then it doesn't matter how much it hurts, you keep coming back to it. So it is definitely like very addictive, and also 100%. Like there's one thing just talking to a guest about their story and like what they've done, what they've been through, but also people have opinions about certain topics. And one thing that we haven't done yet is a panel show. We've got actually capability of having like 6 people on at the same time. So sometimes I think it would be really interesting to get a group of guests on together and just debate or discuss a topic. Like, what do you think about the pause at the finish? And what are some of the pros and cons? Do you go for shorter UT1 sessions or more UT2? So I think that's going to be an interesting thing that we're also going to explore in the upcoming episodes.
Yeah, like we've discussed, it's not an exact science, and there's more than one way to do these things. So there's definitely things that we can have conversation. Yeah, we're looking at we've been looking at booking some group podcasts in, but again, just trying to get people in the same place. Especially this time of year, it's like right in the middle of race season, and the GB squad are all pretty busy at camps and training and stuff. So like trying to squeeze people in has been kind of fun. Just back and forth, like how about this date? How about this date? What about this time? When at Lent? How about then? But like, that's quite fun. I think I'd say we kind of got the hang of that now. And like I said, apart from having to convince incredible people that they actually have stuff worth saying, actually like booking's been going really well recently.
Yeah, and just spreading the word out about it has been also like super fun. We were servicing ergs at Hampton School the other day, and we bumped into Martin Cross. And then having like shown him the podcast and like spoke a little bit about it, he was very excited to also feature. So he's going to be one of the guests that we're looking to have on a little bit later this year.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Yeah, he was super positive about what we were doing, and I still would love to get some boatmen on. Like that's like a typical person who like just doesn't feel like they can contribute enough or like have enough to give or whatever. But like in at Hampton, like Jeff, like, it's just got so much knowledge. And I think what thing you've realized about a lot of boatmen, you think like, oh, maybe they're just boatmen because that's all they can do. Like no, like they can all like will have coached. They've all done other stuff, and I guess they've just kind of found a way to keep involved in the sport that they love.
People enjoy fixing things.
Yeah, I think it's just different ways to stay involved. Like at the end of the day, like not everyone's going to row for GB, and even if you do row for GB, there's a limited amount of time that your body's going to do that. So like after that, do you want to go and get a job in something else, or do you want to stay in this world that we all love being a part of? And like, so I think it's about finding different ways to do it. But like, there's so much knowledge in boatmen. Obviously, there's I don't know whether it's going to be a bit too geeky for everyone, but I think maybe that'd be a good panel one actually.
Yeah, speak to some of the interesting boatmen that we have on, because like exactly, I've not had much experience with dealing with boatmen before I came to the UK. That's not really something that like happens over in Poland, or at least like in the clubs that I was in. But speaking to Adam Berry about fixing boats, speaking to Andy Nee Robinson about some of the stories from when he was boatman down at Caversham, and obviously Jeff from Hampton, he's got just wealth of experience. We kind of like teased a bit about like how not to piss off the boatman, and he was like, if there is a problem or if you've done something, just come up and just tell me straight away. Say, I'm terribly sorry and this has happened. And kids don't tend to do that because they think that the boatman is just going to go on a mad one and just sort of like have a go. Guys, they'll just rather know. If you've done something, just tell them.
I would also say, like, not to put any. I think so many people in rowing are sort of unsung heroes. But like from our perspective, when we're going to a boat club, we're trying to get 20-30 machines done in a day. We need to turn up early. If you're turning up at 7:30, 8 o'clock, who's the guy letting you in? It's the boatman, And then when we're leaving, like they're still there, Like every time I go downstairs, so I ask Jeff, are we gonna, Jerry, what do you want us to do with this machine or whatever? Like one time I go down, he's welding. Half an hour later, he's painting. The next thing he's doing is like, fixing some railings upstairs. Like they do so much, and like they're the guys. Like it's all that stuff like you don't see. That goes into your win, and I think some people obviously understand that, but that I find that funny that it's like these guys are just always there. They, if you have never traded boats as well, you get to just sit in your car and drive off to Dorney. Your boatman's like having to drive a trailer, and that's difficult. Like especially like foreign camps and things like that. Like it's like a lot of effort and hard work that goes into allowing you to perform at their best.
I think there's definitely a lot of appreciation and recognition to be given to boatmen. Like you said, they're sort of like jacks of so many trades. Like I was servicing ergs at Abingdon School back in January, and Johnny in there has like an entire office, and then one of the parts has broken on the rowing machine, and I didn't actually have a spare on that. And he was like, wait, let me go have a look. And then he just went and just picked up a brand new part from the store. And then I was able to sort of fix it. But also talk about the unsung heroes, like for example, bumps racing. Some of these boatmen do quite a few colleges, and like, they've only have like a few hours to like mend boats before the next race needs to come off, and then just keep getting like thrashed again because crews are bumping each other. There's so much more to rowing than just also speaking to people about the medals that they've won, etc. And like that's one thing that I've actually got a comment about that yesterday. That it's like if you like rowing, this podcast is super niche, and like you can just properly delve into some of these topics. And obviously, with the privilege of going to like over 100 clubs a year with Rowgear, we get to speak to so many different people, who have like different responsibilities. We see the volunteers, the boatmen, the coaches, the athletes, and I think it's really fun. And I just think all of them have got so much knowledge that could be shared that people don't even like realize could be explored.
Yeah, definitely. And like, it's another interesting thing about a lot of the boatmen, the clubs that we go to, they're perfectly capable of fixing rowing machines. It's not rocket science. They can do it. They obviously don't have all the tools and the knowledge and the parts that we have, so it takes them a lot longer. But quite often it's the case. It's like, no, like, I told my boss, like, I need to get Rowgear in to do the ergs because they're going to do it in a day. There's not going to be a problem. We know everything's going to get right. If something is wrong, they're going to come back on the warranty and all the rest of it. Because what did Jeff say? It's like, I've got a jobs list. It's like, that's like
256 items, and he said, or something like this. Don't quote me, Jeff. And then at its lowest, I think it shrunk to 160 items. And then every time someone comes in and gives him another task, Jeff just shows them the list and says, right, which of these items is going to get moved down? Because I don't know. You tell me. I will do what you want, but obviously, like all these 160 or 200 impending tasks also like have to get done at some point. So they're so overworked.
It's funny having been on both sides of it, because obviously I've been an athlete, even up at Caversham, being on the athlete side of it, and then seeing on the other side now I know Morris and all the boatmen down there and help fixing equipment and stuff. And ultimately, like, the skill of a great team is to take everything else away from the athlete to just let them row. And like, that's almost quite, let's sort of say about rowing, like rowing is physically difficult, but mentally at times fairly straightforward, because everything else is getting taken off your plate so that you can just focus on training and just focus on doing that thing. And obviously when it comes to racing, like there's the stress of that involved. But as a general basis, you are looked after, someone's cooking for you, and up in the team, you've got crew food and someone's fixing your boat and rigging for you and checking your blades and like all those other things that you don't have to do, and
all the things you don't see as well.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone who gets to win a medal at any level understands that like it's impossible to do by yourself. And I think a common thing I've seen with people who work hard but maybe aren't successful is they sort of have this sense of feeling like they have to do it on their own, or they have to prove to other people that they did it and they achieved it. And it's sort of like the chip on the shoulder thing. And I've had to sit down with friends who run businesses and be like, do you think I got here on my own? Like, no one gets anywhere on their own. You have to be able to take help, and you certainly have to appreciate the people that go into it. And like every single GB athlete, without, I would have been in the physio room. And every single medal winner would have spent time in the physio room. Would have probably had some kind of medical healthcare, like MRIs or CAT scans or cortisone injections, things like that. They would have all been involved in, physiology feedback, maybe on like on the peach data on the gates and stuff. And there's a guy who works at Caversham that prints out the reports, and like even down to just the smallest thing of like having like squash or having like protein powders. Like there's just so much that goes into it.
And when you obviously take part in rowing, you're part of such a big family and like team of people working towards like a common shared goal. And we've also had some comments about potential topics that we want to explore about on the podcast about life after rowing, and like how athletes can deal with like the post-rowing depression. And obviously you go from working in an environment of 20, 30 people, sometimes more, sometimes less. I don't know what your club looks like, but obviously then when you go out into the world just on your own and trying to think about something yourself, you sort of maybe not realize about that isolation is also what's causing like the post-career blues. And like the camaraderie aspect of rowing is so big, but it does, like we're saying, it doesn't just stretch out to just your teammates and your coaches, but also all the other people who are heavily involved in like just running the boat club on a day-to-day basis, because there's just so much more than like can meet the eye.
Yeah, so that's why we want to speak to those people, and as well as as I said, as well as having some big names and some people who have been successful at the top, we really want to delve into like what goes into it, what create success. And I think, we've got access to a lot of people that help do that. So like, that's kind of where we're going. And getting Ben on was good, like sort of our first permanent coach. We've had some coxes who've done coaching as well, but like Ben sort of, I think he says 25-year career in coaching since he started doing it. So that's been interesting. And I'm really excited to get some other people on. I've got another coach from another school that we went to, Ben, who we're going to get him on later in the summer. And I think he's like really at the forefront of pushing where rowing is going now and looking at like really sort of delving into like the details of some of the things that maybe haven't been explored before.
Ben is super switched on. He really knows what he's talking about technically. He knows how to move a boat, how to develop athletes, how to sort of like improve them. And from the pool of athletes that he's had available so far, he's done some really incredible bits, but also like started talking about things that I didn't hear or you didn't also. People talk about who, what, when, like necessarily involved in the GB team or like right at the highest level. Like he coached juniors at a school, and it's sort of like unheard of to sort of like have these chats and like come across them too.
Yeah, and like talk about that's the benefit. We get to go into the school. Like I know Ben, we've been servicing them for a few years now, and it's like even when you know the school, you know the size of it, you know the pool of athletes they've got from, and you start to see the results that this guy's pushing out. Like this is not average. This is really impressive. So like. Again, like that's where we kind of can like find these people who we can bring in and talk to, who like maybe otherwise would have gone under the radar.
But also on the other note, we also don't know everybody that's involved with rowing. So if you think a particular guest would be a great suggestion for the show, or maybe you'd like to come on, just send us a message and we can talk about squeezing in a diary and sort of like what we're going to talk about. Because there might be things that like even with going to all these rowing clubs that we've seen and learned, and also from our career and through coaching, but there is just so much more than that. And like part of doing something to a high level, the more you know that what you don't know. So maybe there's also things that we haven't like explored or we've omitted so far that would be like really great to like cover and go over, especially if you think about a topic that like interests you or that you'd like spoken about. So like I said, like life after rowing, and sort of like dealing with developing a new identity outside of the sport is something that we're definitely going to delve into soon.
Yeah. So I mean, then I guess like we'll talk about a few other people that we're going to have on this summer. There's some that we've booked. I mean, ones that we've really definitely booked. To start with Jack
Beaumont, the legend, who. Shout out, just qualified with his crew for Prince of Wales after 10 years.
Yeah.
I was like, why are they racing at qualifiers? And then I was speaking to Ted Bainbridge at the bank, and he said, oh yeah, so it's the crew that won Prince of Wales 10 years ago. They won Prince of Wales in 2013. So they told each other, in 10 years, we're going to come back and try and qualify for Prince of Wales again. And to be fair to them, they did.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome to see. That was fun having a chat with that crew last night. I rode with some of them. I rode with Kieran in some of my Ladies Plate like Henley campaigns. Jack and I was sort of like at Caversham when he was at Leander, and we sort of skipped each other. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like he's a well-known character in rowing, and I think that's going to be awesome to speak to him.
And yeah, Jack doesn't hold back. He's got some really interesting like things to say, but also some interesting opinions as well. And obviously, he's got an Olympic silver medal. He was the Leander Club captain for a really long time. He's won Henley so many more times than I can even remember. I think there was like a period of time where he just won it like 4 or 5 years in a row. Definitely super excited to have a chat with him. And yeah, it covers some of the stories that probably the general public hasn't heard yet.
Yeah, and then Henry Fieldman, who's booked again, who coxed me in my first under-23 medal, and is now coxing the senior women's 8. I think that's going to be really interesting. I mean, I'm definitely gonna love speaking to Henry. We've done a few campaigns together, and another really interesting one from was it Europeans. He ended up in the final coxing the men's and the women's crew, because the men's cox Harry Brightmore gone down with COVID, I think. So yeah, that's going to be cool. Like, super excited to speak to him about his experience.
That was a super tight margin, that Europeans.
Yeah, and again, like coxes just have so much knowledge. Like they sit right between the athlete coach, and they see both sides, and like, that's really cool. Who else? Emma?
Yeah, so I was speaking to Emma Dyke. She's gone on a couple of rowing podcasts before. She's going to be one of the first athletes or people that we speak to that aren't from the British rowing system. So she comes from the New Zealand team. So it's definitely going to be interesting to find out sort of like the differences in the way they train, sort of like the psychology or race plans or preparation that goes into training. And obviously, because they're on the Southern Hemisphere, their winter is in our summer and our summer is in their winter. So like sometimes, because they do so many training camps, they might not even get to experience too much of winter training. So they just could be on the water for months and months at a time. So I think it'll be really interesting to like talk about those side of things.
I think also, again, we're like, super happy, excited that athletes from other teams are already, really happy to come on. And she was like super positive about it. And I think like that's really cool. That again, we probably thought maybe take a bit longer to branch out that way. But so that's pretty awesome. Credit to Pete for doing some messaging and getting hold of people and trying to get these things booked in.
Appreciate it. We're going to get guys from the Crew Connection on.
Yeah.
So they just recently launched a project. It's a Discord server which you can buy a monthly subscription to, where Jack Gozenke and Sholta Carnegie, I pronounced that right. If I didn't, sorry, Sholta. So yeah, they just started a Discord server called Crew Connection to sort of help athletes go to American unis and sort of like make that transition a bit easier, because Sholta went to Yale University and Jack Gozenke, who was at Leander at the same time as me, he went to Cal Berkeley. So obviously two very different universities. So also it will be really interesting to have a chat with them. So we're going to do a little panel show and have them both on at the same time as well.
Yeah, that's obviously another huge part of rowing. College or university rowing in America is huge, and the standard is incredible. I've luckily beat some of them, but also been beaten on the line by them. Like it's a really good standard. It's going to be really exciting to get into that side of it and talk about it. And I'm sure that sort of opened doors up into some other people who've been over there. Again, feathered and squared.
Yeah, so we spoke with Lenny, who runs, or is one of the guys that runs Feather and Square. So you might have seen them. They do like a hand cream that is supposed to like help with your blisters. So we had a chat with him in that school. Sadly, we weren't able to sort of like book a date before Henley Regatta with them, but we should definitely be chatting to them at some point in the summer, because another great thing about being a business involved with rowing is that we get to talk to other businesses and sort of like share a similar message as a community and just sort of like help each other out if we can in any way, by just even getting the word out there.
Yeah, like I've seen, from what I've seen and heard, the feedback on that product's really good. The hand cream, it's really cool to like, again, like, it's sort of like if our platform can in any way help these guys with what they're doing, like, or at least just kind of self-promotion and things like that, like awesome, like let's do it. Like, so that's again, like getting into the business side of things, which I think's going to be really fun.
I really want to know like what prompts people involved in rowing businesses, what has prompted them to sort of like start them. I'm really interested to like hear the story and sort of like the chat about like what inspired them to do that, and also the vision that they have for it, like going into the future too.
Yeah, and then another one which we've just kind of finally nailed down a date with yesterday is 2000 Gold Fever Tim Foster, which obviously I don't think there's many people involved in rowing who don't know who he is.
A total legend.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's gonna be awesome to speak about. And not only has he achieved the greatest that you can in rowing, he's also coached at national level with the Swiss team, and we've been involved coaching at Oxford College with him as well. He used to come back and sort of doing a bit of finishing coaching. So Tim's great. He's had great stories, and I think that's going to be really fun. And there's plenty other people that we are still in discussions with. Still just trying to find a date somewhere that squeezes into people's schedules. There's a lot of the current national team who we've been talking to, who would probably sort of talk about getting them on post senior world championships. So it's going to be the calendar's looking really full for the summer, which is really exciting for sure. Not just with the podcast, with other stuff. Obviously I'm coaching as well now. I've got another little coaching job for the home countries for the Welsh team, which I'm excited about as well. It's been really fun to get back into coaching a little bit. I've definitely missed it with how much we're doing with Rowgear. So full, but watch this space.
Yeah, July and August look really action-packed from both the podcast side of things and also like servicing. We're going to be traveling to a lot of different places. So a lot of miles to cover, a lot of ergs to fix, but obviously really happy to be like contributed to like success of some of the teams. And about Tim, if you think you know rowing, but have never listened to Tim Foster speak or describe how to move a boat, okay, you're going to really, really enjoy what we have in store. So July and August are definitely action-packed, and I don't know exactly how many episodes before we do the next sort of like performance review, but it's also like good to like touch base and like sort of like catch up with our audience like once in a while to sort of like make sure that we're going in there in a direction that like other people can also see the vision for. Because like one thing is we speak about the podcast and like what we want to do constantly, but like a lot of this isn't on air. So it's like maybe some of the suggestions that that people have or the feedback or the comments, we're already thinking about how to like fix it. So it's sometimes also like good to say that. So it's a bit of a meta podcast, a podcast about a podcast.
Yeah, a little bit on like I think like you say, like we want to do this for the community, and we want people to enjoy what we're doing, and so it's we wanted this opportunity to sit down and just talk about how it's gone and where it's going, and like to let people know like we really do appreciate their feedback, and we are thinking about things, and we are going to kind of work harder at trying to make sure that we explain stuff when it's a bit more rowing only language, and try and explain that, and we'll keep on top of that. But again, like it can't say it enough, like really appreciate the feedback. It's been so good, so positive, and just walking down the bank and having random people stop you and talk about the podcast is so nice. So if you've got feedback, if you've got anything else that you think we could help with, like absolutely, like we want to hear it, and we want to take that mentality from rowing of you don't want criticism, you don't want to be doing anything bad, but if you are, you want people to tell you, like you want people to say, oh, try this, try that maybe. So that's what we're going to keep trying to do. We're going to keep trying to improve and slowly but surely potentially swap out bits of equipment as we need it, and maybe our sort of my sort of painting mic stands can maybe we'll find something a little bit more better for that, or they seem to do a good job. Everyone seems to notice them when they come in. They're like, oh, this is cool. Is that a paint can? Like, yeah, that's a paint can.
We should also get like a separate corner just for when we do the Martin Cross episodes. So like we're definitely gonna like put him on the spot in the corner.
Put him in the corner.
Going from Crossy's corner to Crossy gets corner.
Yeah, and I love what he's doing as well, and like that's from his aspect that it's what he does is like more current news stuff, and that's cool. Like I like listening to his stuff. I listen to a lot of Crossy's stuff, and obviously he's just like a legend of the sport. So to be able to get to sit here and speak to him, like I feel lucky, and we've said it before, like if no one else is interested, like I'm really enjoying myself. So we're going to keep going and definitely pushing on, and we've sort of said that like whatever happened, we're going to get to 20. And that seemed quite when we started like 20. Oh geez, 20 episodes. That was so far away, and now we've already got the next 5 books. Like we're going to get there. That's guaranteed now. We've got this booked in, so it's been a good learning curve, but definitely going to be pushing everyone and just trying to get a little bit better each time.
Hopefully we bring enough motivation and other like interesting perspectives that can like add fuel to the fire of your training and sort of like spur you on to like continue to keep training, to get more PBs, to continue to make the boat go faster. And obviously with even like what's happened this season in racing, there's just so many like tight close calls, and also the European Championships final. That's going to be great to hear about that from Henry. And yeah, it's all about making the boat go fast and making every single last stroke count.
Yeah, and it's been like we said, it's been really fun being down the bank for qualifiers. Awesome to be around that again, and good luck to everyone racing at Henley. And we discuss whatever your aim, whatever your goal, stick to that and be happy with that. And it's not about what anyone else is doing. Like Susie's advice: take a moment to enjoy it. Make sure you look around, and hope we'll be back soon, definitely with another big guest.
Absolutely. So I think it's time to say the cliche: like, share, comment, subscribe, follow. I don't know wherever you're watching this from. But yeah, really appreciate the support. It's super fun catching up. Yeah, I'm just really excited to see what's going to come. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.